Oh, we're on. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
It's another mess we're in, where we talk about the mess we're in. How are you guys? How have you been? Helen, how is your Twitter hiatus doing?
Well, it's quite interesting, actually. I've been playing a lot of jazz.
Lovely. There you go.
But also, it's quite interesting. I've been lurking a little bit, and it is quite amazing what people are prepared to say about you when you're not in the conversation. I saw somebody today say that I had been suspended for hate speech and harassment, continued harassment, and because that person personally, on the back of one of my threads, their wife, I wrote it down because this is quite the accusation. Their wife had been sent half a dozen death threats.
Wow.
On the back of one of my threads. So I said that this was terrible, but yet this person seemed to be blaming Helen Staniland for male actions. And then it transpired that no, these weren't men, these were half a dozen women who'd sent death threats.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, half a dozen women on one thread.
You know what, though?
Had sent death threats to another woman, but there was no screenshots because they just didn't want to ever see it again, and so there was no screenshots taken.
And for the first time in history, a woman did something bad and trans activists didn't pounce on it. Just magically went unnoticed. That's believable.
Yeah.
I know.
I also, as we know, it's a very, very common trait amongst women to send death threats.
It is.
It's almost. They're the same as sending pictures of their vaginas to people.
Yeah.
They often do that.
I can't go a day without my inbox being filled with vaginas. It's just horrible.
I'm so sorry, Artie.
You should
I can't help myself.
Oh my God! Speaking of which, has anyone dared look at the picture of Yaniv's package? My God!
Wait,
wow.
Did this person actually get some work done? So
well,
this is a better. Sorry.
This is the thing. Yaniv is a liar. So it's hard to know. But he's been posting photographs of blood in his toilet bowl and stuff like this, and something that he says is his operation, which is possibly true. The thing about Yaniv is Yaniv's feed is so disgusting that you cannot amplify what he's doing. You cannot say, look at what women have to put up with, because it's so disgusting. And this guy is still on Twitter. He's still on Twitter, yes. And Meghan Murphy isn't.
And Meghan Murphy isn't. And I noticed that Pink News had finally caught up with that story yesterday about Meghan Murphy failing in her bid to sue Twitter.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing to me that in the replies and the quote tweets of that, so many men are saying, good. Yeah. I'm glad this woman, and I challenged a number of them. Yeah. In my head, because obviously I'm not on Twitter. I've challenged a number of them in my head to say, this is what you're saying. A woman has disagreed with somebody on gender identity, and you believe, and Artie, I think this point that you made is fantastic, that this woman should no longer be part of the political conversation for the rest of her life. For the rest of her life, yeah. She's no longer allowed to be part of the political conversation. And I just don't understand the short-sightedness of people saying, yeah, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because when, the tides turn, and at some point they may end up being on the side that are saying things that other people don't want to hear.
Oh, a Guardian journalist just got cancelled by the Guardian, and this is the same journalist was saying there was no such thing as cancel culture. So
right.
It's just kind of, but it's true. I remember really something that haunts me, I have to say. Do you remember Milo Yiannopoulos, the Gamergate guy and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I was part of that whole kind of, he's horrible, he needs to get off and stuff like that. And sometimes I worried that I was getting only a filtered version of what he was saying, that he was being misrepresented. I sometimes worry about that. The stuff I was seeing looked pretty bad. But now that I know that what happened to me and what's happened to others can happen, you have to question it. And one of the last things he said to me was, and this is great, you love this. He said, don't worry, they'll come for you too someday.
Mind you, Milo's a bad example because Milo was just a terrible, terrible person, I think.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Because
he was just a depraved, a pedophile openly, first of all, remember.
Oh, no. He didn't say that. He said
he wanted to sleep with 13-year-olds, didn't he?
No, he didn't. He said, no, I'm pretty sure he didn't. He said that, he said that he had an experience when he was younger or something like that, and there was this priest, and it didn't affect him, or it didn't affect him.
Yeah, he said it was hot, and he said it was fine. I think he was going. He's a shock. He goes for shock, so he's always trying to say things that are shocking. He's just a troll, but yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean, the thing is, it's obvious that the silencing can, it'll just go from him down to me, down to J.K. Rowling, down to Helen Stanland, until it just gets everybody,
Yeah, there's no line. I think there are some people who really are are just outrageous, and I think Milo counts as somebody who's genuinely outrageous. But then, if there's no line, if there's no way to measure that, then things get crazier and crazier. And it's like there are some people who I would genuinely sympathize in their desire to be perceived as a member of the opposite sex because they have genuine distress. But if you don't set a line, then anything goes. Then you can have, alpha males just marching into women's prisons and sports, Or you can have, perfect example, Yaniv, you were saying, like people, when you go from a transsexual is a person who wants to be perceived socially as a member of the opposite sex to alleviate distress, and you turn that instead into anybody who says they're a woman at any time for any reason, even when they're obviously depraved, and you're still saying that counts as a trans woman, that's just crazy, Like Yaniv is clearly a person who's deranged and has serious mental health problems. And so is Buffalo Bill. It used to be when there were all these cross-dressing serial killers, right? You can't call them trans. That's not fair. Those are obviously terrible people who happen to be cross-dressing, but you're tarnishing the trans brand, the trans identity, when you're saying that all those cross-dressing serial killers counted as trans. But of course, Graham, you posted yesterday this love letter that a trans person said that Buffalo Bill and cross-dressing serial killers, fictional or otherwise, are genuinely trans. And it's women's fault and transphobes' fault that they go and kill all these people.
I know, yeah.
And we should be celebrating them and honoring them.
And that's not the worst of it. Apparently, there's going to be a new show called Clarice, where the Jamie Gunn's problematic portrayal is corrected. This is a guy who kidnaps a woman in a van, puts her in a pit, and gets her to rub oil all over her body so he can get her ready to wear her skin.
Transphobic for saying no, you can't have my skin.
Yeah. It really is the most incredible overreach by MRA. I've never seen. Is there a more MRA position than, hey, maybe serial killers who kill women aren't so bad? That is the ultimate MRA position.
I know. Well, I'll be curious to see what Clarice the show does. If they're trying to rehabilitate Buffalo Bill, are they going to do so by distancing Buffalo Bill from the transgender community, or by saying Buffalo Bill was in fact transgender but sympathetic, and it was society's fault that Buffalo Bill?
They'll have a scene like the one. They'll have a scene like the one in Transparent when he goes into a toilet and a young kid and woman and mother, get upset, and she's the bigot. It's like, that's Buffalo Bill. You're absolutely right not to let him into the toilet. Anyway.
Oh gosh, it's really awful even talking about these horrible characters. Let's move on.
Let's move on. But listen, it gives me a good segue, because one place that men like Jamie Gunn won't be able to get into is Giggle, a new app that is woman only, and whose creator is getting absolutely slaughtered by the usual suspects for daring to invent it. So let's bring her in now. She's been waiting patiently for us. Hello, Sall. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Hello.
Really lovely to see you.
One thing, because I was just listening to you guys talk about this stupid Silence of the Lambs Buffalo Bill thing, which I just think is how this doesn't pique every person on the planet is beyond me. Because I'm like sitting there going, okay, so we have to be nice to serial killers if they're dressed as women, but we have to let men dressed as women in female spaces. I'm not looking forward to the convergence of those two things.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
the convergence of those two things was made into a film called Silence of the Lambs. Although the space that Buffalo Bill was in with the woman was the back of his van. Yeah, it's extraordinary. But also,
I mean, in the play, is Buffalo Bill in the play? Is he in a women's prison? Like when they're rewriting his story, like what?
Wow.
I don't know. It's extraordinary, but I think it's also it's not just a problem with the whole ideology. It's a kind of problem with what you might call hot take journalism. Like I always thought hot takes is what the internet has given us, and it's one of the worst things they've given us. The first one that really stood out to me was when the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists were murdered. And it was like the day after that I started seeing the hot takes come in. Maybe it's a good thing these old people, these old cartoonists were murdered. Let's not jump to any conclusions.
Well, but it's even like, so what's happening on Twitter at the moment, sort of in the Australian corner of Twitter. Like obviously there was the bookshop thing last week with Julie Bindel.
Yes,
which was just like. It's like if I sat here at 36 and like uninvited someone to my 10th birthday party.
Yes.
But didn't tell them, just announced it to the world.
It was like regret that, denounce it. It was just so stupid and bizarre. But then the same bookstore has been praising this writer, Claire Coleman, who did the tweet. It was, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it was I'm against killing, but kill TERFs does sound an awful lot like kill all Nazis.
He said it has the same energy as kill all Nazis.
Yes. And then so obviously everyone, we've been tweeting about it, and now Claire is going like, oh no, the TERFs are attacking me. And it's like, no, we're not attacking you. We're highlighting the absolute absurdity of what you've said and the fact that you can get away with it.
Yes. I'll tell you something that it reminds me of. It's a very interesting thing when you see gender critical or trans people who are sympathetic to the gender critical position. You'll often see them called bootlickers. And I always think there's no better sign of their misogyny than they're comparing women to jackboot wearers. It's a really interesting kind of reversal of power. These are males who are saying that women are jackboot wearing thugs oppressing them.
But I noticed that a bit with that. What's the wizard behind the curtain chap who had a meltdown for sort of 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
And some of the accusations that he was then making to justify himself.
I'm Islamophobic, apparently.
You what? Sorry.
I'm Islamophobic because he had said that he could handle all of the TERFs coming back at him because he dealt with ISIS. And so I tweeted, did Oz speak to ISIS the same way he speaks to women?
Yeah.
So he then found that tweet and commented underneath it saying, nice way to throw in some Islamophobia with your transphobia. And I was like,
how?
But one of the things I noticed, one of his accusations were when he tweeted that lovely screenshot of him telling the LGB Alliance to, I think it was to fuck off. His justification was this was an unsolicited. I've been sent unsolicited DMs. And I'm like, but all DMs are unsolicited. Why are your DMs open? And you accepted it. You had open DMs and you accepted it. And his charge was unsolicited DMs. I mean, it was just the most incredible. But this is the thing, isn't it? You see that Twitter has created this terrible sort of two-tiered society where you've got male people who are able to get away with an extreme amount, and female people are not allowed to ask questions. I mean, we're not allowed. We have to be so careful how we couch. We've moved from an era where we were able, where we were frightened of arguing in real life because we kept ourselves back because of physical presence of males and even loud booming voices and trying to keep things calm. And for a moment there, Twitter was egalitarian. We were all allowed to speak. and we each had our turn. There was a tweet and a return tweet and a tweet and a return tweet, and it was lovely. And then suddenly we're back to it again. Male people are allowed to say what they want, accusations, lies, sexual harassment. Women have to be very, very careful what they say. And Twitter has just created this. It's just the most astonishing thing.
Some of these men who sit there, like when women will just question what they're saying, and they'll be like, "I'm under attack," or say like Oz saying that it was an unsolicited DM. Oz wouldn't survive in the world for one day as a woman. For one day, I get death threats constantly. Constantly. And actually, this is sort of a cool way to talk about Giggle Talk in that we've just launched, which is our female-only Twitter feed now on Giggle. And it's one of the things that some of the girls and I have been talking about it on there, is that we're very unused to having no fear. Making some adjustment. It's a new thing of like, hang on a second. I'm quite used to it because I've been using Giggle Talk and testing it for months now. So I'm very familiar with the environment. But coming into this place where you can speak and no man is going to come and say something horrible to you, or that you can even just post the definition of a woman and you're not going to get silenced. It is. It must be lovely. It must be lovely.
Well, a lovely breath of fresh air, but also a stark reminder of how it is actually in the real world, and that you have to actually create a specific space where you're allowed to do this, as opposed to it being the norm.
Completely. But we talked a lot about this during the development of Giggle, where we were like, you know what? For the last however long, we've tried to get men to change their behavior, and they're not. So
they have a little bit in that they're wearing women's clothes while they send you abuse.
They've changed outfits, not behavior.
Exactly.
But so we've tried being like, can you please not rape us? Can you please not verbally abuse us in general? Please don't kill us. That's not happening. So we're like, okay, well, we're just going to create our own places over here, and you can't come to them.
No, you can't. You can't. You must be sent death threats. You must be denigrated. We must comment on your appearance, because this is just not something that a lot of men want as a society. Women having space to talk amongst themselves has always been seen as such a threat.
Yeah, it is, but they're terrified. I was talking about that, like we've been talking about that on Giggle Talk as well. I'm like, what can we get done without into these sort of misogynistic interruptions? Like the first post I did on Giggle Talk was like, okay, how are we going to sort out what's happening? We can talk about it. We can openly talk about it.
Since we're outside of Google, can I register that I oppose a neutering kind of system where men are docked? I don't think that. I know it's attractive, and I know that like you think it'll solve a lot of problems. But speaking for myself, you'll get a lot of resentment.
See, this is a horrible thing, though. Like it's just.
I know that's the thing. That's what men think you're saying. They're gonna, or they're gonna stop our porn. I think one of the big fears that men have is that porn is going to be stopped. Like porn is like the free.
They should be. They should be afraid.
I know
because why would they be? We do want to stop it.
Yes,
who's going to let women stop it?
What? Sorry, Sal.
Wait, who's going to let women stop it? We could try. We're going to keep trying to stop that stuff. It's not going to stop.
Yeah. No. I mean, the thing is, like,
you shouldn't be scared.
I've said this a million times, but I used to think porn was fine because I thought it would stop men from going on, frightening the horses, so to speak. I thought it would keep them off the streets and stop them from bothering women. But in fact, the very opposite has happened. You see now, I think there seems to be a feedback loop where men are feeding each other's most pornographic fantasies about women, and apparently trans-identified porn is the highest rising search, and so I think that what it is heterosexual men turning other heterosexual men on. It's really grim, like it's taken a turn, porn, in a way that I think is so worrying,
The thing that I actually have a big problem with at the moment, though, is these publications that are really for young women who are encouraging this. Like, there's obviously Teen Vogue, which is just a mess.
Incredible.
Awful.
But
yes,
then you saw the Cosmopolitan article last week in reference to the Armie Hammer cannibalism stuff of going like, no, there's a right way to have a cannibalism
fetish.
thing.
Yeah. No, there isn't.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
No, the right way is to put them in jail.
Yeah, like, literally the whole thing. I went down the rabbit hole of that Armie Hammer stuff. Literally, it is his kink, and he manipulated these girls. Everything basically that was happening was consensual, but they were completely manipulated in it, because that's what these guys do. And they gaslight and break these women down. So if you're writing articles saying that there's a right way to have a cannibalism kink, you have just done the groundwork for manipulative.
Yes, absolutely. It is. Yes, it is. I mean, a lot of it, isn't it? It always has been. This idea that women and young girls are told or taught that sort of their sexual availability, their sexual worth is what their worth is, and hence the sort of the dislike of older women, that they see have become mothers and have changed and are not necessarily sort of sexually available anymore, and the sort of the worry that their worth will be changed, and it's I'm never going to be like that. And so the absolute opposition to it, the fury, which is, I think, what a lot of this, the young women who have been, and I would say, groomed on Twitter to accept that, the whole trans women are women narrative, and these older women are just horrible TERFs who are just, they're unpleasant and bigoted. And these young women, in order to shore up their own sort of availability and to make men still like them, plus that they see the abuse and they don't want the abuse. So it's all grooming them to say, yes, porn is great. It's all consensual, then it's all fine. And yes, and of course, male people should be allowed to undress with women if they call themselves women.
Sorry to interrupt, but someone just said something very interesting that I'd love to pick up on some other time. Someone said, "I'm a goth, and goth culture, it's horrific." Rebecca, will you get in touch with me about that? Because I've heard a couple of people say this, and I'd like to do something on it. It's the grooming. Grooming is, again, I'm sorry, I do repeat myself a lot, but grooming is a very misunderstood term. It's not just aimed at a child. Grooming is done to an entire group. It's done to, for instance, like a thing I think everyone should watch is Abducted in Plain Sight. Have you seen it, Sall?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and
when you just so you're probably going to explain it, but it's like this pedophile grooms the whole family.
He grooms the whole family, and I would argue that he actually grooms the people in the area, the neighbors. He groomed the whole lot. And I saw someone once say that grooming of an organization, if an actual child groomer is found to be a child groomer, his colleagues at work will deny it right up until the moment that the proof is shown to their face, because these people are expert manipulators. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a kind of societal manipulation but like the latest Teen Vogue story was about how girls should get used to pornography about rape. I mean, what's going on? I saw a video of a girl who had her back broken by a guy during violent sex. Apparently 1 in 3 women have experience of, during otherwise consensual sex, being slapped, choked, or spat on.
I mean, Teen Vogue is, in my opinion, a very, use the word problematic publication. When I sort of first started tweeting last year, and during and I think it was during the J.K. Rowling, the first round of craziness with her, there was a Teen Vogue writer, a trans woman, who in response to some women, told them to suck her cut off girl dick. Yeah. And there were no, it wasn't the J.K. Rowling, it was the Sasha White firing.
Okay.
And I was just like, well, we're having this discussion about Sasha White being fired from her job. This is being said, no repercussions.
No repercussions. No, I know.
In Australia, like in the last week, saying that like it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like just Nazis. And I was like tweeting for it. I was just like, this whole women are Nazis thing. I'm like, I just don't remember Hitler invading Poland to liberate women.
Boy, what a complicated legacy he would have if that was the case.
But it's just like, you know what Nazism was?
I know, yeah.
It's just, you can't go around calling everybody Nazis.
Yeah. Well, but they do. There was that comedian who was it? Just yes,
Ahmed Dajjali. Really disappointing.
That was it this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just there's a pandemic on, and yet we're worried about what students are not allowed to listen to Nazis.
Yeah, Ahmed, just to remind you, Selena Todd needs Selena Todd needs security men to escort her through campus. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Milo Yiannopoulos. We're talking about women who are defending their rights. Women like your mum, Ahmed, who is not the same sex, by the way, as Eddie Izzard. All right?
I was also I was watching an interview with Lionel Shriver today, and she was talking about free speech. And for her, like the only thing that I'm pretty similar to her, pretty absolutist on it. Like, I'm like, you can say whatever you want to me. That's fine. I will actually cope with it. I hate the hypocrisy of what is and isn't being allowed to be said. But Lionel Shriver said, inciting violence, that's the line where you have an issue with free speech. And I was like, yeah, I agree with that. So when you have somebody saying, I don't care if they kill or TERFs, or I think they should kill or TERFs, well, now you're inciting violence.
Yeah.
So it should be addressed.
Honestly, I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently. Obviously, having been banned from Twitter, and that was the line that I was taking. Direct incitement of violence, or the hope that somebody dies or kills themselves. That's the line, I think, because that is, in fact, that is criminal. I mean, that is actually in the UK anyway. That is criminal. So.
I would say you can add to that as well, but it's not just that. The famous thing of freedom of speech does not mean freedom to shout fire in a crowded theater. But since the invention of Twitter, every second account is shouting fire in the crowded theater. It's the reason why J.K. Rowling is considered transphobic, even though she never said anything transphobic.
Yes. She never said fire, but everyone's like, no, she did. She did. She said fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
But it's the thing.
Can you point that out to me? Oh, well, no.
I think I've always thought that's just such a bad example, though, like this shouting fire, because, like, we all are shouting fire in a crowded theater.
But there is a fire.
And it's on fire.
That's very true. That's the flip side.
Yes.
Like this, basically the problem is that, and I think that
everyone's telling us it's not. We're burning.
It's like what I was talking about with hot takes. It's an inversion of the truth. Like my friend Genevieve wrote this recently, and I think it's such a neat summation of the upside down world we're in. She said, by woman, they mean man. By progressive, they mean regressive. By gender, they mean stereotype. By queer, they mean straight. By cis privilege, they mean sex-based oppression. By living the truth, they mean living a lie. By dead name, they mean birth name. By violence, they mean boundaries. By rights, they mean entitlement. By acceptance, they mean submission. By oppression, they mean women saying no. I think that's perfect. The whole thing in one go, and it's so hard to fight it because it is the prevailing view. But what's interesting about it is it's the prevailing view online, and it's the prevailing view amongst certain organizations that have been captured. But we all know that as soon as you put this to the vote, as soon as this goes into court, the prevailing view is actually the prevailing view that we have, which is that biology is real.
Yeah.
Sex-based rights must be protected. Children shouldn't be put on a medical pathway. All of these are the actual. Someone called me the counterculture the other day. I don't think that's true. I'm the culture. This is what people actually think, you know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, our discourse is now being ruled by pricks like Teen Vogue, you know, and it's a complete inversion of what people actually think and want.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because it's like there are two between sort of old media like the New York Times. Are we all there still?
Yeah,
and
you
new
just
media and the Silicon Valley, which is controlling the new media.
Sal's gone moody.
Sorry.
Artie's taken Sal.
Carry on, Artie.
Sorry.
There's been a lot of drama online recently about a website called
Silicon Codex.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And the sort of New York Times hit piece against it. But it highlights how I think both sides in this issue are sort of elitist snobs who are using their power to control the narrative. The New York Times is very, very, it seems jealous and guarded about the fact that Silicon Valley is starting to dominate the media narrative now. Mm-hmm. And Silicon Valley is doing the same thing at the old media, at the New York Times. But both of these sides, the old media and the sort of New York media elite and the new media, Silicon Valley, both of these people are pushing their own ideas of what they think is right and wrong based on their own sort of very elite privileged bubbles. In Silicon Valley, everybody's a sort of techno-utopian, you know, predominantly male person. So their attitudes around gender are that this is an old, outdated idea, or attitudes around biological sex, that we should just pretend sex doesn't exist because it's the future. And if we just pretend sex doesn't exist, we're eliminating an axis of oppression and we're liberating everybody. That's their attitude. And they're enforcing this very, very strictly. You know, Twitter got rid of sex in their protected characteristics list very explicitly. They just literally believe that sex is not something we should ever acknowledge exists. And they believe this because they are dominated by techno-utopian white dudes who tend to have sexual paraphilias around cross-dressing. And they think that means they're transcending their maleness, you know?
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, you've got New York media elites who think that this is all about virtue signaling and expressing their liberal credentials by being so accepting of gender identity ideology. And they're both completely wrong. And they're both selling women short completely. And they're both not representing the mainstream view on things. And I don't mean the mainstream view as in like these poor common folk who haven't been educated. It's the view that we hold because it's real and it's true. So it's very frustrating because both sides have gone completely bonkers, but especially Silicon Valley. And you probably have a lot to say about that, Sal, because you are making a social media platform for females that is pretty much a direct response to the fact that Silicon Valley is trying to pretend that sex doesn't matter.
100%. When we were developing Giggle, like we would be talking about it, and my dad would be like, "I wonder why Silicon Valley hasn't done an app for women before." And I was like,
yes. I mean, I looked at the stats. 73% of the tech people in Twitter are male. 62% of the leadership. But what was interesting is that they didn't actually have the stats for the senior leadership, because we all know that leadership encompasses a really wide range, but it's the senior leadership that actually matters.
It's also important to remember that places like Spotify will pay for their employees' gender reassignment surgery.
Wow. God almighty. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, you know, because they're so accepting. I'm like, just a dental plan and a basic healthcare plan is pretty much what anyone wants.
It's also something that I don't know, could be abused. I mean, you know, if it was me and I would come into work a few days after taking the money, and I'd just say, "Yeah, got it done. Everything's fine."
I don't know if that would
happen. Do you want to check my genitals?
What? Yes. No gatekeeping. No gatekeeping. No gatekeeping.
Sorry, just this horrible
thought. Like, women have, especially in America, have been fighting for years to either make sure, get, or keep birth control as part of health insurance.
Yes.
Places like Spotify are like, "Oh, come on in. We'll pay for your gender reassignment surgery, no questions asked, all fine."
Yeah.
But if a woman wants to take the pill, we have to ask the religious groups first.
Amazing. It is
sure
amazing.
they're okay with it.
Hey, listen, just to wind back a little bit to what Artie was saying about the New York Times. I saw a headline the other day. It says half of New York Times employees feel they can't speak freely. Isn't that amazing?
I saw that.
Yeah. I'd imagine the same situation is at The Guardian as well. By the way, The Guardian, did I tell you they recently had a diversity kind of seminar, and they've got Joyland Mom to speak to them. Joyland Mom, who blocks every woman who disagrees with him. He blocked you, did he?
He blocked me because I recommended a documentary about women's rights in Afghanistan for him to watch.
And he blocked you? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't know if he watched it.
But it is. But
he really didn't like it.
Yeah. But it is incredible.
That was terrible. Block.
But this
no
is,
more,
but this
no
is
more
back
suggestions from you.
But this is back to what you were saying about sort of grooming and capture. Why Mom? I mean, what credentials does he have here, apart from being very, very apparently and obviously against women's rights in this area? I mean, he is absolutely against women's rights here. So they are getting somebody in who is against women having single-sex spaces and sports.
And that's his claim to fame. That's a good point. His claim to fame is that he stepped in it by announcing that women should shut up and you should block them all, and they're all bigots. And suddenly someone went, it's a great candidate for a diversity talk.
Yeah. But that's what's happened. And as you say, it is so astonishing that, I mean, I know a lot of people are now seeing this because there are a lot more people in this fight this year than there were last year, and certainly more than there were 10 years ago. But it's still, I talk to some of my friends who are not on Twitter. Oh, hang on, that's me now, who are not on Twitter. And they're like, no, it's difficult. As you were saying about Yaniv, it's actually difficult to get the message across because it's so extreme that it sounds as if you're making it up. It sounds as if you're still, you've got your tinfoil hat on and
that's always been one of our problems. That's always been one of our problems. Like, you tell people stuff and it's so crazy sounding that you sound like you're a member of QAnon. You sound like you're one of the people who stormed the Capitol.
Like, on what other planet, like literally with all of these like woke identity people, in any other context, having a white, privileged, successful man talk about diversity would be absurd. But so long as he's got the position of women's rights as shit.
Exactly.
Welcome. We'll roll out the red carpet for you, sir.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Do you know who I wonder about a lot? Kath Viner. How the fuck does Kath Viner sleep at night? I mean, she's the editor of The Guardian. How does she sleep at night? Joyland Mom, really?
Yes, it is amazing.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that tweet. There's a clinical psychologist who did quite a popular tweet this week, saying he basically how did he put it? He said, "Oh yes." In fact, I think I need to find it. As a social psychologist, I understand why using women's sports to argue against transgender rights work, but it's tough to imagine a more morally bankrupt position that I'm going to make you sit in a gender that doesn't fit you so my daughter can win her soccer game. And I think the thing that really sort of strikes me about this is this, again, it's that idea that he simply cannot consider that women are advocating for women's sports because they are advocating for women's sports. There's nothing in it apart from that. And it's using to argue against transgender rights. Transgender rights that came first, and women were like, oh, what can we use? Oh, I know, sports. That's a good one. And then obviously, to carry on, the most ridiculous, I'm going to make you sit in a gender that doesn't fit. What does that mean? Sit in a gender? What does that mean? It's a meaningless phrase.
One of the things I like to do with people like that, and I find it so easy, is you just insert the other words into theirs. Like, so I responded to him and I said, as a woman, I understand why men argue against women's rights, but it's tough to imagine a more morally bankrupt position. I'm going to make women and girls give up their rights and accept losing so my gender non-conforming son can win his soccer game. game.
That's great.
Yes, that's
Exactly. Put a spin on it.
Will you send me the text of that? I'll put it under here. Hey, listen, someone said this and I want to address it. Someone said Graham Linehan used a block bot on Twitter to silence people. I certainly did. I didn't use it quite to silence people. I used it because during Gamergate, I kind of believed the official line that Gamergate was purely a hate campaign against women. In some ways it was, in some ways it wasn't. But at the time, I completely just thought, oh, these people are bigots, and I should block all of them. But I have refined my thinking about that. I don't kind of quite.
And you've spoken about this before, and I think it's really one of your strengths that you've said. You know, I used to do this, and now I've reconsidered, and I wouldn't do it again. However, but I want to address that using a block to silence people. You're not silencing people.
Exactly. This is not a free speech.
I don't want to hear it. They're still allowed to talk on Twitter. You just don't want to hear what they have to say. And that's fine. I think I have absolutely no problem. Before I was thrown off, I was on over 100, over maybe almost 200 block lists. That doesn't bother me in the least. So people don't want to hear what I've got to say. That's fine. But I'm still allowed to say it to people who do want to hear it.
Yeah, I know. I used to love the block function is a great thing because it stops your Twitter feed from becoming like the worst YouTube threads that are just filled with horrific abuse and
also just trolls, and it's boring, and people aren't interested in scrolling through it.
But I do want to make the point though that during Gamergate, many of the people who were on my side, I now realize, were liars, absolute, just pure liars, and would say anything to try. And that's why I was talking about Milo earlier. My kind of experience, I realize now, was so bent and corroded by these people who say anything about anyone. I'll give you, the best example is J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling said nothing wrong, and yet she has become a toxic figure. She said nothing wrong. So I do sometimes think I wish I could go back and tease it out a little bit more, find out who was talking to me genuinely, find out who was just sending abuse. And I do think my use of a block bot in that it was a bad thing. I wish I'd engaged more. I wish I'd spoken.
Yeah, but this person in the comments is trying to say that you're a hypocrite, trying to play gotcha games. No, block bots and the idea of adding someone to a block list and then telling everyone that you have an obligation as part of your social circle to participate in the block list, that is verging on silencing, because you're telling everyone that to be part of the in-group, you have to just discount everyone else. Block lists are trying to encourage people to block whole groups of people. There's problems there for sure. It's not quite the same thing as literally censoring someone, but it's getting there. It's ratcheting it up a notch. But just personally choosing to block individual people because you think they're dicks, or for whatever reason you want, you're not interested in them, their name has an unpleasant sound to you, whatever reason you want, you're allowed to block someone, right? That's not the same. So this person in the comments is sort of trying to be a bit of a muckraker, but is really showing that they're not very thinking this through very deeply. Who just refuted cancel culture. Stop trying to pretend cancel culture doesn't exist, kid. Everybody knows it exists. The only people trying to pretend it don't exist are the people engaging in it regularly. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Look at this. I go watch the ContraPoints video about J.K. I actually watched that because the artist Birdie Rose did a video on it, and it was the first time I've actually seen ContraPoints. Oh my God!
Insufferable.
Oh my God. An insufferable, pompous arsehole. Excuse me.
I can't imagine watching it.
I had to apologize to Birdie because I found it so hard to watch because the amount of lying he said. At one point they said something like, at first glance what J.K. Rowling said doesn't seem transphobic. But let's, it's stuff like that. It's like, and every kind of, all the evidence against J.K. Rowling, it doesn't come from anything she said. It comes from these dishonest people interpreting it.
Yes, of course it does. Yes, it's saying on the surface, it doesn't look bad. No, there's a reason for that. There's a very, very, very clear reason for that. Now, of course, you can put a spin on it. It's like we were saying about threats of violence. they would have to be direct threats of violence, I think, for me to say they should be banned, because there's all sorts of, but you've said this and therefore trans women are going to die. That is not a threat of violence. And no matter how you put a spin on it, women's words are not at fault here. And so this is that sort of video, isn't it? Where they're like, but if you take this and then if you look at the sort of the fifth order effect, if all of these things happen, then it's really bad.
It's like that. Nobody does that. I mean, you could read cereal box ingredients and be like, aha, you see, it's a recipe for murder. You know, you could just interpret anything, you know. What's this? Monosodium glutamate. You know, like.
I think that's another thing that you know, I remember dog whistle as a word. It just becomes one of those popular words that people like saying. And it really means you can call anything, you can call anyone anything, because everything is a dog whistle if you want it to be, you know?
Yes.
Sal, can I just ask, what is the mood on Giggle at the moment? How many users do you have? Do you know?
I actually haven't looked because I've just been sort of like, I've been doing the moderating. So for the last 2 days, so I've had like intermittent sleep. I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely exhausted. But no, it's been really, really cool. Like lots of profiles have been made. Like responses still like it, you know, it's so new. So we're ever, you know, there's like the working out. It's very simple how to use it, because I do want to say like the inspiration behind it was to sort of create like a Twitter Reddit hybrid. Where you don't follow anybody. We're going to eventually introduce subscribing to people, but you don't follow anyone. We have a main feed because I wanted to create something where every woman has an equal voice, that you can sit there. If you scroll through, you're going to be seen just as much as anybody else. Because, you know, I don't like the popularity contest of everything else. I think there's a lot of like honesty that gets taken away because you want to like people try and do the best takes, or you know, you get into that like echo of a popular opinion or whatever. And we also don't have any algorithms, so like deciding what people are seeing. So it literally is just in real time. And so every time you post something, you have to do a hashtag title with it. And that's what creates the forum. So say, for example, you wanted to go on there to say, talk about gender critical stuff, which you can no longer do on Reddit, you would just do your posts with hashtag gender critical. And so anyone who wants to go on and read about gender critical stuff would just search gender critical and see every post that's ever been posted about it. Right. And then you just reply under them. So it's really, really simple to use. And just, it's like.
Do you have the upvote and downvote thing that Reddit has?
No, so what we're doing, we didn't put any likes or vote stuff in to launch. I am going to, my whole thing was always just wait and talk to the users about it and find out what they want. If they want anything like that, we have popular hashtags and popular conversations. So there's one screen where you can see like one of the most popular hashtags being used on that particular day, and then the conversations with the most responses. So say like if you have got a conversation that really has ignited, or done a post that's ignited lots of conversations, you'll sort of get there. So that's a slight little popularity element to it. But no, I just wanted it to be a place, like especially where women who have been too intimidated to go on Twitter or too burned from it. Because there's some girls I was talking to on there today who were saying like, I've been on Twitter for ages, but I've never posted anything. I just read because I'm too scared to. I was like that for 7, 8 years.
And there's an absolute reason for it. I mean, we know exactly why. But this is nice. In the comments, I can see lots of women saying, yep, I'm joining tonight. I'm joining.
Yay. I'll be awake. So it's actually been, so a few things. So we did lots of updates on, also with this build, we updated like our App Store and Google Play images and all of our descriptions. And a few things in terms and conditions, all that boring sort of stuff. But one of the things that we put on the App Store and Google Play is specifically that it's social media without misogyny, and specifically mentioned that it's a place for women to have a refuge away from the misogynistic abuse that they find on other platforms. And so it really makes the horrible misogynistic reviews that the men write on our App Store and Google Play really stand out even more.
Great.
Well, they constantly do. There was one the other day that was saying, if you see the CEO in person, harass her.
Wow,
that's a bit on the nose.
Right? Oh, we're the good guys. Let's just harass women.
Right? Yeah. I'm just like, I could not prove the need for a female-only space better than this.
Yeah,
right? Absolutely.
Oh my God,
absolutely.
It's just outrageous.
No, here's 2 comments. I think high praise indeed.
Very good.
And also this, I wish I could enjoy it best for your sake. You know what? I feel the same way. It's a bit like your sister's bedroom. You kind of want to just see what's going on. That's the only thing. Or the girls' clubhouse, you know?
It's nothing like that. No, I know. Yeah. No, I mean, it just, I suppose in one way, like women talking, it's just human beings talking to each other. There's nothing like that. Oh, we've got to see what like the girls are talking about. It's just human stuff.
Yeah.
We so rarely get that opportunity.
Yeah, it's so strange. There's no mystery. You're right, and yet there's this kind of constant attempt to get into women's spaces by men. It is like this.
We had actually last night, I think it was about 4 a.m. There was a guy he did our record. He tried 54 times to get onto Giggle, like during the selfie to get on, and he couldn't.
Oh yeah, because I just want to say to our viewers, you have a thing where you actually have to take a picture of your face. And there's an algorithm, and there are people who are going to look at your face and evaluate.
Yeah, so that's when I say the monitoring. When I say monitoring, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching that. We don't monitor Giggle, like what women are saying and stuff like that. If someone has said something really horrible, you can report it. We'll action it, but it's not moderated like how like a Reddit subreddit is moderated or anything. Like, and I never liked that. I like, for example, I got a lifetime ban from the feminism subreddit because I used wrong pronouns. I don't know. I did something wrong. It was like my first time over there. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. One of the Salvador spouses got banned. Yeah.
So like, as long as you're not like, you know, inciting violence or you're just using basic decorum, you're fine.
Yeah.
And
I'd say inciting violence doesn't come up a lot on an all-female platform.
It doesn't
those 6 women who sent the death threats, they're obviously
not all on the Giggle talk. Yeah.
You know, it is something I do keep pointing out that like how gender conforming or how gender basically all these threats of against women are very gender conforming for
they're totally on the nose. Yeah.
For men, but not very gender conforming for women. So these trans women who do threaten you are being very gender conforming for the sex they're not supposed to be.
It's one of the things I've said for a long time, actually. Like, you can get a group of women together and we'll disagree with each other and have arguments. Like, in no way do we all get along, or if that's what is even the goal. But we don't threaten to rape each other.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. So one of the things I would say all the time about Giggle, even like back in the very early days of developing it, I'd just be like, yeah, it's just basically going to be a place free of rape threats, if nothing else. So, because you know, you can have, like, I've had some like conversations with other women, and sometimes you're just like, oh my God, I want to just like bang my head against a brick wall. This is so stupid. But I've never thought like, but I want to bang your head against a brick wall.
That's
the difference.
The difference of how women interact with each other.
Well, there's a hypocrisy right at the heart of all this, isn't there? Because the gender identity movement says there's no differences between males and females, but you can see the behavioral differences. They're general, but they're very, very distinct. Yes, it's very rare, but it's possible for a female to be so aggressive that she makes death and rape threats. But it's just so outside of the norm. And those norms make a difference when you're dealing with crowds, but also with your face recognition thing. People will say, well, you can't tell by looking at someone's face whether they're a male or a female. Of course you can. It's so gender identity activists are like, it's impossible to tell by looking at someone's face whether they're male or female. And then a trans activist will say, well, a male has heavier brows, so you have to have those removed surgically. You have to have your face, and they'll go in extreme detail, you know? Yeah.
Completely contradictory. We also get told all the time that we use phrenology, which we don't. I had to research what the hell that was. When they first started saying that. No, it's just like, so it's like we're not even the only platform that uses it. It's just so many platforms use this sort of stuff. It's just that we have it set to a very high accuracy. We monitor it all of the time, 24/7, because, well, it doesn't. once in a blue moon makes a mistake, but we just always want to make sure that it is working. One of the major things with Giggle is we're just building trust with our users, going like, we are exactly what we say we are. This is female only. We are literally doing everything we can to make sure it's female only. But men try and get on all the time. And I'm sure there's some who just do it out of the curiosity of like, oh, does this actually work? Mm-hmm. And so that's fine. And you can sort of tell because they'll just like, you'll just see like it's a guy that's taken a photo once and gone about his thing. But then you just have guys that are just trying. And then all the time, and we have also like a liveness feature with it. So you can't take a photo of a photo. And men try it all the time. And for some reason, the most popular image is of Jennifer Aniston. And so I have this crazy fear that eventually Jennifer Aniston's going to try and go on Google and I'm going to block her.
And you're going to be like, no, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'd say that would be automatic grounds for cancellation if she does try to go. Well, wouldn't it be? They're going to do, that'll be the next thing, Sal. They'll say that being on that site is you know, a cancelable offense.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
It's a transphobic dog whistle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they do. They call it the TERF app, and I'm like, absolutely no way. Obviously, I mean, it's just so stupid. But we don't even talk. Like, no one's even talking about that stuff. It's like just like news flash. The moment we're away from this trans horrible stuff that we're having to fight for every day, we're actually talking about the stuff you were interrupting.
Yeah,
exactly. This is what we've said. Women really don't want to spend that. I mean, this is such a great thing for men to take us away from actually advocating against porn, male violence, etc., etc. I mean, it's almost by design there to just use up our time and energy and effort.
I would prefer to be spending my time stopping female genital mutilation and sex trafficking. That's what I would really love to be able to focus on that. But I've got to spend my time just saying what the word woman means.
Yes, because if you can't define that, you can't fight for anything else. Well, of course you can't, because we all know who this actually happens to. You know, it's not that if, you know, it's. I mean, I don't want to make light of female genital mutilation, but there is no chance that people are saying, "Oh, is this a female penis or not?" I mean, that's just not happening.
It's scientific American
identity before they do it.
Scientific American recently called the penis an enlarged clitoris, and the person who gave them, Scientific American.
I saw that. That was the most incredible thing.
The person who gave them this breakthrough in science was a gender affirmation surgeon, because they'll know. But anyway.
So you don't need vaginoplasty. You've already got a clitoris. That's every single client who comes in to have their penis turned into a vagina. Guess what? You've already got one. It's just a look.
Anyway, sorry. Oh God, a deadly silence near towards the end of the show. We were going so well. Well, listen, we are coming up to the end. Sal, is there anything you'd like to leave people with in terms of, you know?
Download Giggle. It's on Google Play and App Store, and start posting. And I'm on there. Ask me any questions. I'm on there all the time. While I'm monitoring everything.
Well, I hope all the best happens with Giggle, because you're proving the need for female-only spaces, and you're proving to Silicon Valley that you cannot discount sex and feminism.
100%.
You know, Twitter must reinstate sex as a protected characteristic, and it must allow women to speak about women's rights. And Reddit has to allow gender-critical people to express themselves freely, and they have to clean house and get rid of some of their moderators who have invested.
Get rid of the pedophiles, I'd say. Just get rid of the pedophiles. That's
So Sal, I really hope your app really shows everyone that we can't just pretend sex isn't real.
Thank you. It's also the last thing I'm going to say as well is that one of the things I'm really trying to push for at the moment is I think we need to make the word autogynephilia more known. I think more people need to know what that is.
Yes. I think I saw your tweet where you said if more people knew about it, I think half of these problems would go away. And I think that is true.
Yes, because in this whole debate where language is so important, this is one of it. And saying trans women all the time is actually not being clear enough. Because
or
then
even autogynephilia.
You sound such a bigoted, hateful person, and it's like, no, I'm actually talking about autogynephilia most of the time.
Yeah, and I'd rather we even simplify that word because it's a kind of a highfalutin sounding word. I like to call it self-sexual sometimes if I'm talking to someone who's outside of this, because it's really clear. You're a straight person, but your sex drive is directed at yourself, but you're not attracted to males, you're attracted to females. So you want to make yourself look like a female and you want everyone to pretend that you're a female. That's kind of my attempt to simplify it.
That sums it up very well, actually. That's a really cool, that's great.
I did like your description of gender euphoria, Artie, which was it's French for boner. I thought that was very, very good. Listen, we'll leave it on a laugh. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Sall, hang around for 1 second. We'll say goodbye properly.
Like and subscribe and buy them a coffee.
Like and subscribe, buy us a coffee, and download Giggle. See you next week.
Yay!